to Out of the Box Radio with me, your host, Christine Blasdale. Out of the Box Radio is a weekly podcast of audible ear candy dedicated to bringing a fresh perspective on this thing that we call life. And each and every week, we're going to be diving into the topics that matter most with lively conversations on issues such as health, wellness, and transformational healing, all with the goal of creating a better world and becoming a happier human being. I will be your tour guide for this epic adventure, and each and every week, we're going to be embarking on a journey with the ultimate goal being transformation to our highest potential. And now, let's get out of the box. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of the Box Radio. This is a very special program today, so I'm really glad that you tuned in. Today, my guest is none other than Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson is an internationally acclaimed spiritual author and lecturer. She's been a guest on programs such as Oprah, Larry King Live, Good Morning America, many, many others. And of course, many of you know her from her incredible books that she's written, New York Times bestsellers. 7 of her 12 published books have been New York Times bestsellers, and 4 of them have been actually ranked as number 1. And she has a very, very special event happening in February. We're going to be talking about that, called Sister Giant, and it's on February 2nd through the 4th in Arlington, Virginia. And we're going to be getting into that, what that's all about, and what she's got going on right now. And the wonderful part about Out of the Box Radio is we're going to find out some solutions to some issues that we've got going on in the world right now. And as we always talk about here on Out of the Box, it always begins with you, with me. So without further ado, I want to welcome to Out of the Box Radio, Marianne Williamson. Marianne, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Now, I sort of teased the audience a little bit about Sister Giant, and I love the idea about this. And then I just saw there was an announcement. You have incredible speakers. You yourself, of course, are going to be there. But then I just saw an announcement that my hero, Bernie Sanders, is going to be one of the speakers there. And I'm right now getting goosebumps. I'm getting so many goosebumps right now. That is an incredible offering that you're going to be having in February, in early February. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about the programming that you have scheduled for those 2 days?
Well, Senator Sanders will be our opening keynote on Thursday night. He was our keynote at our last Sister Giant, which was held in Los Angeles in 2015. It was just right before he announced his run. And as he said, our conference really gave him a sense of inspiration. He definitely got the sense from our audience that, he should run, Bernie, run. And he remembered that and wanted to return. So we were are very excited to have him back. The weekend is an opportunity for us 2 weeks after the inauguration of the president-elect to have what I think of as an integrative political conversation. I think we need to understand very deeply what exactly happened here. What is the perfect storm that led to this, what I think and what you and your listeners probably think is a very unfortunate challenge that we have in front of us, namely the agenda of the upcoming president. And it's a problem that challenges us to reach for something more than a political to-do list. We have to really face the elements of our own selfhood, our own history, our own politics as they now exist in order to dismantle some of the realities, both internal and external, that have taken us to this place, and in order to build some of the structures, internal and external, which will help us dissolve the problem and move into the solution. So we will have people talking about very serious political issues, whether it's Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who is trying to make it fit into her schedule. Hopefully that will be confirmed and announced within 24 hours. Bernie Sanders, we have Michael Weiss, we have Ari Berman talking about voter suppression and dark money. We have Zephyr Teachout. We have Opal Tometi, who is one of the co-founders of of Black Lives Matter. So we're going to be talking about the very serious externalized issues, but also the internal issues, whether it has to do with Jean Houston or a religion panel with people like Robert Thurman talking about Buddhism, Michael Lerner talking about Judaism and the Jewish tradition that is behind his progressive politics. So it's going to be a very interesting and I think very unique conference in that we want to take the same kind of integrative approach to healing our society that many of us embrace about healing the body. There are psychological issues to an integrative approach. There are emotional issues and even spiritual issues. And I think that that is so important right now because Americans are good with a to-do list. Just tell us what to do, and we'll do it. That's what we did with World War II. That's what we did with taking the man to the moon. This is not so simple. It's more like a cancer that has already metastasized. We need to strengthen our societal immune system in order to ward off this diseased condition that has come upon us. So I think that the conversation that we have about politics in America today has become, in terms of mainstream political drama, so superficial. You would know that yourself because you were part of that antidote. But we have to mainstream now a deeper political conversation, and I think that's what will be happening at Sister Giant. I think people who want to face the challenge, to rise to the occasion of this time, but from a place which is philosophically and spiritually sound. We're not angry, we're not demonizing anyone, but we're not kidding either.
Oh, I love that. What I'm finding is that as we heal ourselves, we do help heal others, and I think that's what's happening in society right now. I always believe that everything that's happening on the outside is a reflection of what's happening on the inside, and a great deal, and I'm speaking for myself in my life at this moment, there are things that I am looking at that you can look at them as a tragedy or as a loss or as a very deep, sharp change. And I think that it can bring out sometimes the shadow self, the darker self, and what we're seeing is a direct reflection of our darker selves. Now, how do you deal with your darker self? And right?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. How do you deal with your darker self, especially when it's coming up in your own personal life and then on the outside, what you see in the political world or the world stage?
Well, the world stage is really no different than our personal lives because all that a nation is a collection of individuals. So the psychological and spiritual principles that rule the development of one life are the same as those that rule the development of a society, of a civilization. One of the speakers is a woman named Vera de Schallenberg, who wrote an article that many of your listeners have probably read, Kali Takes America, talking about just that and talking about the Trump phenomenon in terms of the shadow side of America and what has come to the surface in order to be healed.
Yes.
And that, having read that article and being involved in that conversation in my own work, I invited her to speak. But I think it's important when you say you can look at it as a tragedy or a loss, or you can look at it as something else. I think it is a tragedy. It is a loss, and it is something else. This is not just kind of sort of bad. This is a catastrophic development, and I think that the American people are adequately awake to the danger in our midst. Now the issue is for us to hold that alertness that we feel, that awakeness that we feel in a sacred container so that we can go very, very deep into the vertical. That's the only way we will be able to affect the horizontal. And I think that it behooves us to remember that this is not the first time America has had to face a dark night of the soul. We had slavery in this country. We had institutionalized segregation. We had women unable to vote. But the point is not just that America has had these dark shadows that we've had to deal with before. We're also the inheritors of the legacy of the abolitionists, of the women's suffragettes, of the civil rights movement. So we just have to do collectively what we have to do individually when we face tragedy and loss and pain and suffering. And that is to dig deep down into ourselves, look at what we have probably not been willing to look at, recognize our own failures, atone for our own mistakes, not pussyfoot around with that, make amends, apologies, and atonement where necessary, forgive other people for their mistakes, and I believe call on an otherworldly power, something larger than ourselves, to do for us what we cannot do, and expand into the people that we need to be in order to have the wisdom as well as the power on a personal level, as well as an intellectual level, an emotional level, a psychological level, to get this country back on course.
Well, that's why I'm so appreciative of the conference, the 2-day conference that you're doing in early February. It's folks too. It's February 2nd through the 4th. You can find out more information at sistergiant.com. But what I like is the blending of, instead of being in paralysis, in shock, in anger, in fear, because fear can lend you motionless, or just you don't want to bury your head in the sand and forget about it and just say, let's leave me alone. Let me just eke out my existence here and hope that nothing happens to me. But what I like about this is that you are blending, you're blending the spiritual aspect of who we are as human beings, as humans being, or a being, in a human body, but also with the political urgency. And it's a gathering of minds that are not normally put together, Marianne. Normally, we're such a divisive society, right? It's you're either on the blue team or the red team. You're either Republican or you're Democrat. You're either progressive or conservative. You're either spiritual or political. And I love the idea of the blending of it for this 2-day conference. And I also see you have someone who is also another hero of mine, is Mr. Dennis Kucinich, and Elizabeth are coming.
Yeah, and Alan Grayson will also be with us via Skype. He will be in Europe at that time. Absolutely. I think that Dennis is one of our greatest political thinkers. Absolutely. And, in terms of what you were talking about a moment ago, one of my favorite lines from Gandhi is that politics should be sacred. And he didn't mean it should be religious, but he meant that it should be expressive of the deepest aspect of who we are. And that is absolutely what has gone wrong in politics. It's been so corrupted on every level.
Yes.
That it is a superficial, stupid conversation. And, I don't know what you could get more stupid and superficial than these ridiculous tweets. And we're laughing. We laugh, and it's horrifying. It's really horrifying, because I think that a tweet, the fact that the president-elect of the United States is tweeting today about Arnold Schwarzenegger's low ratings on Celebrity Apprentice last night, and how he's really happy about it because Schwarzenegger supported Kasich and Hillary. It's almost like you can't laugh. This doesn't even feel like lack of impulse control. I don't know if it's Adderall addiction or what, but this is not someone in charge of adult faculties.
Well, no, that's the whole thing, isn't it? It feels that there is a spoiled child that is, literally, when you think about the fact that the amount of power that this one person has, it is absolutely frightening. I don't even want to. My mind goes very, very deep and dark when I think about the possibilities on that.
Speaking of that, yeah, it's interesting you said that. I want to go back to something that you said before that I forgot about, which is when you said we could just go into fear. One of the reasons I wanted to do Sister Giant right away, is because as soon as he is inaugurated, he will have so much power to create this wall of sound. And we must be prepared to respond with our own wall of sound. Each and every one of us, anything we can possibly do to annoy him on any given day, anything you could possibly do to be part of an effective counterforce, a repudiation and resistance to the extremist elements of his agenda. Nonviolent, obviously, legal, ethical, all of that. That's one of the reasons we're going to be talking to Buddhists and, the prayerfulness that's necessary. This is not about personally demonizing anyone. It's, when I say something, or when you talk about how he's like a spoiled child, that's not a judgment. That's a description.
Yes.
And I come from a field where we call it when someone needs an intervention because there seems to be imbibing something. We're acting very naive here as a nation in even pretending. And I like to think, look, who knows? But I can't help but believe that some of the people who voted for him aren't looking at some of his behavior now with some deep concern. Because I don't think everybody who voted for him by any means is a racist or misogynist or xenophobe or anything. I think there was just a lot of economic despair. But I think the point I'm trying to make, and this is how I contextualize in my own mind Sister Giant. Of course, Sister Giant is just one piece. I mean, you have a podcast, somebody else has a conference, somebody else has a piece of legislation. I mean, we're all going to play the part that we're feeling assigned to, but just that we get in there immediately and don't move. We must not allow each other to be paralyzed. I think we must hold hands together. We must collaborate. We must not be silent. We must not be passive. We must be active. And I think the only way to avoid a kind of terrifying paralysis will be if we really stick together. Just like you and I are doing right now. It's all about collaboration. What are you doing? How can I help? What are you doing? How can I help? And that's just how we have to be with each other on a level beyond anything we've ever been before.
Exactly. And one prime example of that, look what happened or is happening still, because it's not over, in North Dakota with Standing Rock. You know, the pipeline, the company was going to just go through that. There was very little media coverage, very little, the outside world did not know a whole lot, but they stood true. They were peaceful. The tribes that were there and are still there in freezing conditions, praying, being hit with water cannons, rubber bullets, dogs sicked on them. My goodness, every single thing that you could throw. They even had a saboteur. The oil company had a saboteur come in, pretend to be a Standing Rock protester who became violent. They found that out. But what happened was that word was spread through social media, through people tweeting and Facebook and YouTube. And then the swelling of support came from people all around the world. Thousands of veterans showed up and are still there. There's many of them that are still there. So that's the power that we have. Now, will the pipeline actually still go through? Will they crush the resistance? That hasn't been figured out yet. That hasn't completed yet. But the power that rests within us to band together peacefully is so powerful. It's so profound to me. It's so profound.
And I think something important about what you just said is that it went beyond social media. It started, the call to action came from social media and continues to be promulgated on social media. But the real power is how many people, like the veterans and other people as well, actually went to North Dakota.
Yes.
And that's where the power really lies, is people. It's time for us to get offline sometimes too and just take our bodies and go someplace. One of the things I like about Sister Giant, and we're doing it in DC. The reason we're doing it in DC, I've done them before. All of them had been in Los Angeles, but Senator Sanders' office had said if he can do it, he can only do it if we do it in Washington. So we gladly are doing it in Washington. But I'm very excited about that because I think a lot of people, there's something about being in Washington.
Yeah.
Actually claiming the energy of that place and just having your molecules there and being in those ethers. I'm going to be at the Women's March. I think that's great, but we need to do more than just stand there. And that's what I really like about Sister Giant, that we really move into the activism aspect of it. People can watch it, by the way, on live stream as well. But in A Course in Miracles, it says, an idea grows stronger when it is shared. And so there's something here about the collectivity
yes.
of our conversation, all of us at this point, which takes us beyond just staring into our screens.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. And as you were speaking, as you were saying that too, I got full chills. I got the goosebumps that went all the way up and down my spine and my arms. So that is just the deepest truth, One of your books, A Return to Love, is probably one of the most, I would say, required readings for folks. But there's a quote that you have in this, and I love this, what you wrote. You say, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." Let's talk about that, because so many of us in our day-to-day lives, we feel like we're powerless, or we're just responding to the outside world. But let's talk about our deepest fear right now, especially in relation to what's happening, but let's talk about it in our personal lives as well.
It's so interesting, that paragraph that has become very well known and often misattributed to Nelson Mandela's inaugural address, which it was not, all of that stuff. It's just a paragraph from my book, A Return to Love, just one paragraph. It's not a standalone anything. And I have no idea how it got cut out and turned into what it's been turned into. But the point is that coming from my book, A Return to Love, that book is my reflections on the principles of A Course in Miracles. I always say, if you like that paragraph, you love the book. There's so many paragraphs in that book. Because that concept, I can't take credit for that concept. That's the basic concept of the Course, which is that it is the light that scares us, not the darkness. The darkness, the smallness, the littleness, is our perverse comfort zone. It's what we've been trained into. We've been trained to feel powerless. This did not happen by accident. The entire thought system that dominates the world is such that we are to believe that each of us is just one little speck of dust, one little body surrounded by billions of them in this very dangerous world. And how could we not feel terrified within this thought system? And yet it is the matrix of mental habit patterns that we inhabit. And spiritual liberation is breaking out of that thought system. It's a radical paradigm shift, as it were, to the recognition that we are not separate, we are one, because the body itself is just like a suit of clothes, and that there's really no place where I stop and you start. And if I think of the world that way, then everything I do is different. I realize you can't do something to someone in Iraq and not have that karma coming back at you. Now, you can atone for having done it, and that will break you out of that karmic wheel of suffering. But otherwise, the laws of cause and effect simply are what they are. And God help us if America reaps its own karma the way it is reasonable to think we just might. And that's why our moving into deep atonement as a nation, that's why these spiritual principles are so important. When you've made a big mistake in your life, whether you're a Catholic and you're talking about confession, or you're a Jew and you're talking about Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, or you are in AA and you're taking a fearless moral inventory and acknowledging the exact nature of your wrongs, every serious spiritual path includes deep personal accountability, taking responsibility, atoning for errors, and seeking to be better. And Abraham Lincoln, when he established a National Day of Prayer in 1864, he said that nations must confess their sins, as he said, just as individuals must. And I think America, there's a real impulse in America today for us to look at our shadows, whether it has to do with how we've treated Native Americans or racial injustice or whatever. But it also concerns me because I think that Americans tend to fall into two somewhat simplistic categories. One are people who are so rah-rah America, will not acknowledge our own shadows and think you're bashing America if you do. But the other category is equally unbalanced and incorrect. And that's those who are so focused these days on our national sins, as it were, of racism and so forth, that they give no credence to what we've done right. For instance, yes, we had slaves, but we also had a generation of abolitionists. Yes, women did not have the right to vote, but we also had a generation that rose up and gave women suffrage. Yes, we had institutionalized segregation, but we also had the generation that rose up as the civil rights movement. So I think it's important that we identify not only that which is wrong in our history and in our current realities, but also that we identify with that which we've done right. Let's not be the first generation of Americans who are just so cynical that we use that as an excuse for not helping and then wimp out on the job of making right what's been wrong. And that's how I see Trump. It's a dark night. This is a collective dark night of the soul. I'm not in any way minimizing how really, really serious a problem we have on our hands. But I am pointing out we had slavery in this country. It's not like we haven't had serious problems before, and we need to do in our day what others have done in theirs, rise to the occasion, and take a country that has swerved out of its ethical center, swerved out of its democratic truths, and simply put this thing back on track. And I think we have become, as a generation, so pathologically focused on our own individual dramas, our own individual circumstances, yes, our own individual problems and wounds and triggers, at the exclusion of recognizing some of these collective dramas and wounds. And many people will find themselves very surprised that when they actually turn their attention to the needs of their country because their country needs them now, that they'll realize at the end of all that a lot of their personal issues have kind of dissolved and fallen away because they only existed as expressions of this kind of overwrought narcissism that has become the tenor of our day.
Of course, it's this apathy that I witness. It's this, because I know what you're talking about. There's those that have the flag waving that we're perfect, that this country is the best thing ever, we don't make mistakes. And then there's the other side, the flip side, which I have experienced myself in the progressive media world, where everything that it's all focused is what I call angry expression. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. This is what's happened to us. And it puts you into a victim mentality. And so those two thoughts, there is a place in between that I'm hoping that people will realize that's why I wanted to talk about that quote, that we do have the power to make change. We just need to get over this apathy that I see. Even my friends who are considered, progressive, wonderful people, when it came to the election or when it comes to certain legislation that comes out, their belief, Marianne, is, well, like you said, they're small. They think small. What can I do about it? I can't do anything about it. We're just going to have to roll with it. And I'm like, no. We don't have to just roll with it. There are things that we can do. But it's almost like they've given up. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of being a traumatized citizen from years and years of war and shock and upset.
Oh, we are giving them too much credit, way too much credit.
Okay.
Because when you hear somebody say, what can I do? And you say they've given up, usually somebody who says that hasn't given up. They never tried. That's not the kind of thing people who actually tried say. So that kind of cynicism, as I said before, is just an excuse for not helping. And I think at the deepest level, it's not even apathy. It's a sense of paralysis. It's a sense of powerlessness. This is what happens when you don't teach your children civics. This is what happens when, through various ways, civic participation is suppressed.
Oh, yes.
And we just did not develop what de Tocqueville called the habits of democracy. But when you say people have given up, no, they haven't given up. That's just something convenient to say, what can I do? Because hope is born of participation in hopeful solutions. Once you start trying to make a difference, the amazing thing is how much difference you can make.
That's true. Because also one thing leads to another.
Yeah, we've got to stop behaving like children, and we've got to stop showing respect to people who are talking like children at a time like this.
I think the conversation that people are having right now as this new, it's a change that's happening, but it's also somewhat of a continuation of the same. Yes. Donald Trump is far worse than the current President Obama and maybe past presidents. The potential is far worse, but at the same time, haven't we for so many years still been fighting? Because even if a Democrat is in office, there are still wars being launched. There's still aggression happening. There's still injustice happening. So it's almost like we can never really we can't ever really just chill and sit back and say, these folks have it.
And the problem with our generation, it's like when Ben Franklin was at, when they said, do we have a republic, sir? And he said, yes, if you can keep it. The mistake was that we ever thought you could just cruise. It's like if you have a car, you have to fill it with gas. You have to tend to it. If you have a house, you have to tend to it. What happened to us? We thought we didn't have to tend to our democracy. You can't just show up for an election once every 4 years and vote and think that you've done your part for your democracy. It doesn't work that way. And I think hopefully when this particular crisis is over, I hope that the American mind will have really been shocked into remembrance that each and every one of us are responsible for our democracy. We can't just go into cruise control. I wrote a book called Healing the Soul of America that came out in 1998, which I was already talking about, the corporatocracy, the plutocracy, the oligarchy, the fact that economic injustice had become the trend, that we were taking the major material resources of the country and putting them in the hands of a very few. So those of us who are political junkies, we're talking about that stuff, starting back in the 90s. And of course, the trend started really with Ronald Reagan's his excitement about deregulating corporations and letting the market go free and all of that stuff back in the 1980s. So we're just experiencing the climactic version of a trend that has been moving forward for a long time. When I was growing up, you looked to the Democratic Party to retain the soul of American democracy and to really hold aloft the vision of a soulful politics and a soulful America. But back in the 90s, once the Democrats started taking corporate Wall Street donations as well, and Bill Clinton started, wanting to prove with the Democratic Leadership Council that Democrats could be friendly to business too, we had a real problem on our hands because both major political parties too often act, one much worse than the other, obviously, but they both acted far too many cases at the behest of the huge multinational corporatocracy, as opposed to at the behest of the better angels of our nature. There's certainly no doubt about that. We're in a mess. This was a perfect storm. And that's why, and it's a whole systems breakdown of sorts. And that's why at Sister Giant, we're taking on the conversation in a holistic, integrative way, because it's not just one level of things that's gone wrong. It's a lot of things that's gone wrong. And we need to deeply understand what has happened and what is happening, like I said, inside ourselves as much as in our politics and our society, in order to turn this very, very large ship around.
And that's what I like. I really love the idea about connecting it to ourselves, because we do so often throw out the problem is out there. The problem is out there. It's somebody else. It's what they are doing to me or what they are doing to the collective. And it's difficult for people to turn the mirror around on themselves. But it's just like you said with Gandhi. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. If you're miserable, if you do not treat people with respect, and I mean everybody, the person that serves you coffee in the morning, the person who picks up your trash, the CEO, treat them equally as you do to the CEO or, the Dalai Lama, until we start actually taking a look at ourselves and changing those aspects of how we react in this world, then we're not going to be able to really affect change on the outside, because then it's just like window dressing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, Gandhi said that the end is inherent in the means, and everything we do is infused with the consciousness with which we do it. And I think that's why in my book, Healing of America, I call it Yin Activism. There's the yin and the yang. And I think that when you look at Gandhi's principles of nonviolence and those that then Dr. King brought to apply to the struggle for civil rights in the United States in the 1960s, that's really the whole idea of nonviolence political philosophy, is that there is an inner light within each of us, our love, our compassion for each other, which can heal political and social and economic relationships just as it can heal personal ones. So we have to bring in that aspect of ourselves to the political struggles at hand, or they will be at best temporary solutions that we bring forth, because we will be dealing only on the level of effect and not at the level of cause. You could have a constitutional amendment and a presidential proclamation that could end the institution of slavery, but no external remedy could end racism. So we have to do both. And it's like Martin Luther King said, the desegregation of the American South is the political externalization of the goal of the civil rights movement, but the ultimate goal is the establishment of the beloved community. So we have to do the internal changes, as you were saying, and the external changes. It's not either or, and I think that's the point. That's another place where people tend to go for one or the other, and it's both and. You can't use your spiritual practice as an excuse for sitting out politics because, it's just too toxic.
Exactly.
I'll just do yoga and drink green juice and it'll be fine. No, it won't, because I don't, particularly today.
Yes.
If it's a public issue, it's going to make its way to your private door.
Oh, that is so true. And speaking of public and politics in general, I know you had recently you ran for Congress.
I did.
And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that experience. First of all, people know Marianne Williamson as an author, as a speaker. You've been so and rightfully so for so many years in this box, so to speak, of spirituality, transformation. Then you run for political office, and I want to know what the catalyst was for that. And then if you don't mind talking a little bit about your experience, be it a good experience or I know nothing is good or bad, but please let us know a little bit about that part of your life when you actually decided to run for Congress.
Well, as I mentioned, my book Healing the Soul of America came out in 1998. So I always had political interests. It was just a process of my becoming more and more public. And, I founded Project Angel Food in Los Angeles. So, I from the beginning of my work, it was never just some woo-woo theorizing. People were dying of AIDS in front of us. We did something. So there's the Course in Miracles is very practical. And my work has always been about dealing with people in trauma, people dealing in traumatic situations. So to me, it's like the difference between, there's a Protestant theologian who talked about the difference between the Good Samaritan and the conscious Samaritan. The Good Samaritan sees the beggar on the road and gives him some food. And then he sees another beggar on the road and he sees them and gives him some food. Then he sees another beggar on the road and gives him some food. But at a certain point, the Good Samaritan has helped so many people who are begging that he thinks to himself, why are there so many hungry people? That's to me what politics is about. That I've been involved in nonprofits and charities and throughout my career. But at a certain point, there is no amount of private charity that can compensate for a basic lack of social justice. So I could work with battered women, I could work with disadvantaged youth, I could work with the various parts of the population that have suffered, and I have. But at a certain point, you realize there is something so wrong in the society that so many people are suffering from this. What are the systemic issues? What are the economic issues? What are the social issues? What is the larger picture by which so many people are being deprived of what should be their inalienable rights of opportunity in this country, so that a very, very few people can get more than theoretically they deserve. So it's not like all of a sudden I woke up one day and I changed. I simply have moved in my life towards what seems to me the place where in my own dharma I could possibly be of help. As far as my running is concerned, when you asked me what it was exhilarating and it was brutal. I have had enough time to feel pretty clear about what I did right and what I did wrong. I didn't know how to run a political campaign. I felt it was legitimate for me to run because I felt, and I still feel, that I understood the issues well enough that I could hit the ground running as a congresswoman. What I vastly underestimated was the significance of the fact that I didn't know anything about running a political campaign. I thought, well, you raise money and then you just have someone do that part. And that's simply not the way it works. And, many people, Barack Obama as an example, lost their first congressional campaign. And if I was 10 years younger, 15 years younger, I'd probably say, give me a few years to get over it and I'll go out there again. I don't see that happening. I do not see myself running again, but I'm just as passionate about the issues, doing what I can. Sister Giant would be an example, to use my voice in whatever way might be helpful, to amplify these issues in my own way to the best of my ability. And also, I am still very aware that politics is a numbers game. We simply need more people speaking a certain message, who are able to make it through the corporate lid that the Democratic Party has been as guilty as the Republican Party of putting the lid on real progressives. Not just in the presidential campaign, this last presidential campaign, but they did it with primaries, congressional, senatorial primaries all over the country. And so if there are ever genuinely progressive candidates who are speaking the soulful message that I believe is the true spirit of American democracy, even though I won't be a candidate again, I will show up in whatever way I can to be of service to them.
And that isn't that part of what happened with Bernie Sanders? Was
excuse me, not part of what happened. It's exactly what happened.
I mean, millions of people came out and were excited for the very first time. He was actually, the idea of a democracy by and for the people really was exemplified with his candidacy, with his running. But at every turn, and this is probably what was so disheartening with people, was that they knew he would be able to beat whoever the Republicans put up, because he had the support, the hearts and minds of so many people. So the fact, though, that he did run, and even though he did not get he did not win the primary. Well, I personally think that it was stolen from him, but that's my own thing. It did change us. His just running changed us. And I think the same thing with your throwing your hat in the ring, changes people to, it raises our vibration to a point of, yes, that's what we want. And we're not going to stop. If we have to keep running, if we have to keep supporting Bernie Sanders until he's 150 years old, I don't care. I'll start making him some smoothies, and taking care of the man.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, my point before was that the way the elite Democratic establishment suppressed Bernie's candidacy was repeated throughout congressional and senatorial races throughout the country.
Yes.
There were progressives like Bernie Sanders trying to make it through primaries all over the country, and well-funded corporatist candidates within the Democratic Party would cut them off at the knees. So that was my point, for people to realize it wasn't just Bernie. And that's why a real progressive revival within the Democratic Party is so important, unless people are going to go the third party route, which is certainly an important conversation. The second thing I would say to you, just as a woman, you just did something that I think we as women need to bring into the conversation with each other. You said a couple of minutes ago, well, I think that they took it from him, blah, blah, blah. That's just what I think. And I just want to say to you as a woman, no man feels the need to say, well, that's just what I think.
Okay.
That's what a lot of people think. And so just as a woman, I think we need to support each other in making declarative sentences without apology.
You mean Russia didn't steal the election?
Well, that was what happened after the Bernie part, but Russia did have a part to play. Actually, I think that the the stuff against Hillary was drip, 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 and I think that those. It's so awful. Did you see what Trump said today about the hacking intel?
No. What did he say?
He said it's a political witch hunt. It's really amazing the way this man is siding with Russia against American intelligence. We have a serious conundrum on our hands here. I can't even laugh about it.
Well, we have a serious issue on so many different fronts, and sometimes it is overwhelming to the point where not overstimulation, Marianne, but an avalanche of issues that are affecting us on so many. It's that idea of spinning the plates. In the olden days of yore, I guess on the Ed Sullivan Show, there'd be a guy that would have a stick and he would be spinning a plate, and then he would have another stick and spin another plate. And at one point there would be 10 plates being spun on these sticks. And the idea is to make sure that none of them fall to the ground. And I think what's happening right now, what we have obviously with this extremely fascistic political system that we have, the power that we granted Obama is now, those powers are going to be transferred to Donald Trump. But then you have the issue of people in their own, economics, about the job situation, about health care, about gay and lesbian, transgender rights. These things are all coming at us. And I think that that's why the conference like Sister Giant is so vitally important, and others, to give people the opportunity to express these emotions, these concerns, but then also to at least band together and do something. But it can be quite overwhelming. For me, it is, I'm doing my best with Out of the Box Radio. You're doing your best with conferences like that. But is there something even more that we can do? Do we need to create a new media outlet as well? Because I think that this relying on corporate media for your information and solutions is not working, obviously. But maybe there's something that we can do together, creating a new political party or a new media system. I don't know.
I think one of the problems on the left is that we talk too often in terms of starting something new. We waste a lot of time starting something new rather than joining together with the projects that are already occurring. There's all kinds of alternative media. You're an example of it. And I think that as I was saying earlier, I think the way for us to have most effect on the horizontal plane is to go deeper into the vertical. The question of what to do emerges from at the highest level, emerges from a deeper level of devotion and dedication. If you wake up in the morning and you are kind of sort of, if it's convenient, going to help my country today, then you will receive superficial guidance because your dedication is superficial. But if you become if you get to that point in your own spiritual development, to really ask the God of your understanding to use you, to be of service to the enlightenment of all living beings, that everything that you are about, everything that you are, everything you have, everything you do, might in some way be a vessel of love that will cast out fear, and a vessel of light that will cast out darkness, then you will be overflowing with insight. You will be overflowing with collaborative, synchronistic possibilities that just fall at your feet.
Yes.
You don't have to figure out what to do so much as deepen your devotion to doing whatever it is the heart of love would lead you to do.
Oh, I love that. I got a huge heart blast on that.
You're so great. I hope you'll come to Sister Giant. I hope you'll be there.
You know what? I am going to try every single thing I can to get there. And I want our listeners also to, if you can, please attend Sister Giant. You can find out more information at sistergiant.com. And it's going to be in the heart of Washington, D.C., held at the Marriott Hotel. It's actually in Arlington, Virginia, February 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And if they can't be there in person, it's going to be streaming live, correct? You said?
Absolutely. And also for anybody out there, Arlington, Virginia just means right over the bridge.
Yes.
It's kind of like saying it's in the valley. And in Los Angeles terms,
And you're so right when you said you really need to be there. I remember many years ago, I went to the March for Women's Lives. Talk about a gathering of beautiful beings, and it wasn't just women. It was men and women, all different ages and socioeconomic backgrounds and colors and religions, and we descended upon the Capitol there, and it was just really such a powerful moment for me, in my personal life. And the energy, this is the thing, folks. What happens is that even if you go to this, and yes, we are facing a mountain of, insanity and otherness, but what you get is that energy, that connection.
Well, absolutely.
With fellow souls, beautiful souls. I'll never forget the time I was there in DC because of that.
I meet people at spiritual conferences a lot around the country who've never even been there. Our founders, many of them were Rosicrucians, they were Masons. There's a lot of sacred geometry, the ley lines, and the way the city is laid out. And, there's going to be some serious, dense material energy coming like a wave into that place with the Trump inauguration. We got to provide an energetic counterforce.
Oh, that's so true.
Absolutely. Stand your ground. That's how and I think, that's stand your ground. That is your ground. That city and what it represents belongs to all of us. And that's the power of our citizenship. We did not elect a king. We did not elect a dictator. We elected a president. We do not work for him. He seems to think we're his employees, the way he told people. I love his commentary to the people in Hamilton. They needed to apologize, like they're his employees, and he gets to tell them how to behave, right? It doesn't work that way in a democracy. And we need to remember that. We need to remember that before we can remind him. He works for us. And so I think there's no better way than as soon as the inauguration is over, just, we're coming, we're here. And I'm not saying that he's going to be aware that we're here. It's more on an energetic level. And, no one project or one conference or one is enough. It's a deep revolutionary wave of resistance. And let's each of us just be part of it as best we can. Like you were saying with your podcast, every cell of the body is assigned to its own natural intelligence. Some are assigned to the lungs, some are assigned to the heart, some are assigned in society, some are assigned to the arts, some are assigned to business, some are assigned to education. But politics is a collective assignment. We're all assigned, and we all need to be there. And if we didn't know that before, I think a lot of us know it now. And just watch, Winston Churchill said, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing after we have exhausted every other option. So we've been asleep for a long time. This is something Americans sometimes do. We go to sleep, we take a nap. We're not awake to what's happening. But I think most people in the world, whether they like us or not, would admit that when Americans do wake up, we slam it like nobody's business. And that, to me, is where we need to be right now. We know who Donald Trump is going to be in the next season of our lives. The real question is, who are we going to be? And I think we need to find our greatness. It lives within us. And I wouldn't count us out, because we have only just begun.
On that note, we're going to wrap up this incredible hour. I want to thank you, Marianne Williamson, for your time today and for reaching out to our listeners, talking about Sister Giant, talking about just let's fire up and do not sleep. Do not go back to sleep. Don't take a nap yet. Come on. we got to wake up.
So right. We have at least 4 years before any of us can take a nap.
Exactly. So for
God bless you, and thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed talking to you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, also, Marianne, if people want to check out your personal website, where should they go?
Absolutely. Marianne.com, and I live stream my talks on A Course in Miracles every Tuesday night. They're live streamed for free, so you can find out about that at Marianne.com, and about Sister Giant at sistergiant.com.
Thank you so very much, dear. All the power to you. All the power to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Once again, that was Marianne Williamson, and you can find out more by going to marianne.com, or for the weekend conference, February 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Washington, D.C., Sister Giant, you can go to sistergiant.com. I want to thank you so very much for listening to the program today. We've got a lot more in store for you this year, so please Stay tuned. You could subscribe to the podcast by going to iTunes or iHeartRadio. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then that way you can actually share the programs that you hear. So if you liked what you heard today and you want others to hear about it, you want to share this program, go to YouTube, subscribe to Out of the Box Radio, and you can send very easily the program, the video of this program, to friends and family. Oh, and I wanted to make a very special announcement before I forget. Beginning in 2017, Out of the Box Radio is going to start accepting media sponsorships. What does that mean? That means that your organization, your product, your company, your service can be promoted on this program. There'll be different packages available to you. And just so you know, there's approximately right now 10,000 live listeners on Fridays at 3 p.m. on UBN Radio. Now, that is a great thing, and the numbers are growing. But the best news is there's approximately 22,000 digital downloads of the podcast each and every month. And again, that number is growing as well. We're growing, and we're hoping that in 2017 we're going to get even bigger. So if you're interested in a sponsorship package, please contact me, Christine, and you can do that by emailing me at cblosdale@yahoo.com. If you don't know how to spell it, it's C, as in Christine, Blosdale, BLOSDALE, @yahoo.com. There's a number of different packages available to you. Again, that email address is cblosdale@yahoo.com, CBLOSDALE@yahoo.com. I'm really excited about this coming year. I want you to know that I've got some incredible programming lined up for you. And please, so that this program can grow and more people can find out about wonderful guests like we've had on today, please share this information. Tell others about it. So until next time, I always want to remind you to think outside the box. Have a beautiful day or evening, and we'll talk to you soon. Tune in next week. Bye for now.